If you can improve people's quality of life, if you have your health, you can do a lot of things. But if you have very poor health and you're living in poverty, it's a very, very difficult struggle. And as you know, it can go through generations.
What's your assessment of Australia and how Australia fares on a global scale when it comes to health inequities?
The issue of health inequity seems much more complex in Australia than in Canada, partly because Canada is an older country. Maybe it's evolved at faster rates, but 100 years ahead. The rural health and the First Nation gap, I think those are, I'm coming to understand that they're very complex issues, and dealing with land rights and intergenerational trauma or addiction, and to work through all of that, and the individuals that you have to deal with, and to try to comprehend and understand that it's very, very difficult. But the government is invested, and the Aboriginal Medical Services people that I'm working with, and then the people in rural communities there, they want to make, there's a lot of people that want to make change. So I see hope, and I see the willingness to invest in approaches that are evidence-based and that will benefit the community. So I think there's great hope for the future for Australia, but there's still incredible needs. And I think that we have to look at the needs within communities specifically. I think the rural-urban divide is still quite huge, and that includes the First Nation gap as well. But the rates of inactivity and obesity and metabolic syndrome and depression and anxiety and addiction and alcohol abuse within rural areas is still substantially higher than in urban areas. I think if we could adapt our current evidence that we have to the specific needs within a community. And we have to be a little bit flexible, not to have so much of an agenda, but go in, assess the needs within those communities or neighborhoods, and tailor our programs to meet those needs. And you would expect from a large town to a city or from town to town that may vary. So to have less of an agenda and be more open in co-designing with those communities a way forward.
Well, the Rural Health and Research Institute that you are director of is still relatively new. Now, as the inaugural director in that role, what are the dominant issues? What are the big issues that you are going to focus on, that you are focusing on?
Addiction and mental health, anxiety and depression and metabolic syndrome, obesity and physical inactivity and type 2 diabetes and end-stage renal disease. These are well known, but addressing them is more complex. And unless we get within those neighborhoods and find out, why are you not using the services that we are providing, and get you to better understand the behaviors within those communities, I don't think that we can fully address the gap unless we do that.
Alan, how will you make the Rural Health Research Institute the nation's leading research institute on rural and Indigenous health? What's the big idea?
To work in areas of lower socioeconomic communities involves working in the community. And that involves one hell of a commitment to rural communities and First Nation communities, which they desire.
What would you say to broader Australia? Why this work is important?
I would say to the broader Australian population that too much we've come in with our own agenda, and we really haven't engaged enough and examined enough what are the problems within communities, the chronic problems, the gap, and why are they not being addressed? We need to not only to speak to, but to have the evidence-based research to support decision-making within communities. And that's, I believe that's lacking. I don't see anybody who's done this type of work.
So what will success look like in 5 years and then in 10 years for the Rural Health and Research Institute at CSU?
I think if we can address that rural gap and in a more holistic, positive way within communities, and we're partnering with the communities like no one has ever done before. So if we can go into community and say, you know, our lives are better, you know, we've made some impact, we have made some improvement, and the government says, you know, we put money in this and it was well spent. I think that if we can make modest improvements in the next 5 to 10 years, I would be quite happy about that. Along the way, there will be a lot of roadblocks. So if you can maintain that hope and that vision, you can succeed.